Thanks for staying on Bernama TV. Here are this week's top stories. The Gaza Strip is facing unprecedented suffering as shortages of food, water and medicine push its population to the brink of survival. Also, the WHO warns that children in Gaza are being mentally and physically shattered by 2 months of blocked aid and continued Israeli strikes. And in today's Point of View, I'll be speaking with ASHIKIN AZIZ, Bernama Singapore Bureau Chief, and we'll be discussing about the Singapore General Election 2025 happening tomorrow. I'm Liz Ong, you're watching The World on Bernama TV. We begin Bernama World with a devastating update from Gaza. Gaza is experiencing severe humanitarian collapse due to an ongoing Israeli blockade that restricts food, medicine and aid. Over 52,000 Palestinians have died, with over 1.1 million facing hunger and 65,000 children acutely malnourished. Hospitals are overwhelmed, lacking supplies and electricity, while famine and disease spread. The UN labels the crisis a man-made disaster. Patients, including infants and those needing dialysis, are dying due to insufficient treatment and equipment. And here's a grave warning from the World Health Organization on Gaza.
The reality here is that we are breaking the bodies and the minds of the children of Gaza. We are starving the children of Gaza, because if we don't do something about it, we are complicit in what is happening before our very eyes. We are complicit. We are causing this. You, us, and everyone who does nothing about it. It's horrific. And the children of Gaza should not have to pay the price, as all children have done in the past, for the sins of anyone around them. This just has to stop. Any right-thinking human being will stand up and say, this just must stop. And as a doctor, as a physician, as someone watching, more than 1,000 children without limbs, thousands of children with spinal cord injuries and severe head injuries from which they'll never recover, thousands and thousands of children with severe psychological distress that they may never recover from. We are watching this unfold before our very eyes, and we're not doing anything about it. And as a physician, I'm angry. I'm angry with myself that I'm not doing enough. I'm angry with everyone here. I'm angry with you. I'm angry with the world. This should not be happening. It cannot continue. We have to stop it. I'm glad someone asked the question, but this is an abomination. It's an abomination.
Now, earlier this week, Israel declined to appear before the International Court of Justice, where judges are considering whether its blockade of aid into Gaza breaches international law. The Israeli government submitted a written statement dismissing the proceedings as politically motivated. Since early March, all supplies to Gaza's 2.3 million residents have been halted. Humanitarian agencies warn of severe shortages, while the UK, Germany and France have called on Israel to allow unrestricted aid access. At the United Nations, France is calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, with its foreign minister condemning Israeli strikes and the ongoing blockade of aid. He highlighted the growing civilian toll and demanded full access for humanitarian relief. France is also pushing for a two-state solution, warning it's at risk. A peace conference with Saudi Arabia is planned for June. Meanwhile, the UN chief says that solution is close to vanishing unless leaders act now. We shift our focus to Ukraine-Russia war. The Kremlin says President Putin is open to peace in Ukraine, but progress remains slow. Russia wants its goals met, preferably through diplomacy. Talks with the US are ongoing, though complicated. Putin has signaled readiness for direct talks with Ukraine, but Kyiv hasn't responded. Former President Trump says without him, Russia would take all of Ukraine. The war, now over 3 years old, has become a dangerous standoff between two nuclear powers. In the meantime, Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday has announced a 3-day ceasefire starting midnight on May 8, ahead of the country's Victory Day celebrations. The Kremlin says it wants Ukraine to join the ceasefire, warning that Russian forces will respond if it is broken. Moscow also repeated its offer to hold peace talks with no preconditions. Ukraine's foreign minister replied, saying if Russia truly wants peace, it should stop firing now. Still with Ukraine-Russia war development, North Korea confirmed on Monday that it has sent troops to fight for Russia in the war with Ukraine following an order from leader Kim Jong-un. The North claimed its forces played a key role in the liberation of Russia's Kursk region. The Central Military Commission said the decision was made under a strategic partnership signed with Russia last year. Ukrainian officials estimate North Korea had sent 14,000 troops, including 3,000 reinforcements to replace its losses. In another news related to North Korea, the country has test-fired weapons from its new warship, the Kohyun class, for the first time. Cruise missiles, anti-air missiles and artillery were launched in a display attended by leader Kim Jong-un and senior officials. Photos shows Kim on board with his daughter as missiles fired into the sky. The ship is named after a historic anti-Japanese fighter, marking a symbolic moment for Pyongyang. I'm off to a break now, and when I come back, I'll be speaking with Nur ASHIKIN AZIZ, Bernama Singapore Bureau Chief, and we discuss the Singapore General Election 2025. This is The World on Bernama TV. Welcome back with me, Melissa Ong. As Singapore gears up for its general election in 2025, all eyes are now on the political landscape might shift under new growing leadership and growing public expectations. With Malaysia and Singapore sharing deep historical, economic and social ties, the outcome of this election will be closely watched on both sides of the causeway. Joining us now from Singapore is Nur ASHIKIN AZIZ, and she's the Bernama's Bureau Chief in the Republic, to give us on-the-ground perspective on what to expect as the city-state heads to the polls tomorrow. Hi, Shikin. Thanks for doing this, and let's start with this. What are key issues dominating the political discourse ahead of Singapore's 2025 general election?
So I think generally it's a bread and butter issues because, economy, cost of living, housing, health and education, mostly it's about domestic issues that are being discussed, especially during the rallies. But international issues which relates to Singapore, for example, like the US tariff, the US-China trade war, are also being, being discussed, being brought up in the rallies. And also among the issues that are being talk about is about the GST increase in Singapore and how it impacts the cost of living and inflation in Singapore.
Right, and how has the political landscape in Singapore evolved since the last general election in 2020?
I think the main thing that we need to understand is that it's a period of a leadership transition from Lee Hsien Loong, who was the Prime Minister for 20 years in Singapore, and now it's PM Lawrence Wong. So be it as a leader of the government or chief of the PAP party, this is the first time that PM Lawrence Wong is leading the government and also the party to an election. So at this election, we can see that PAP is introducing a lot of new faces. There are 32 of them. And in his campaign, he's been emphasizing a lot on bringing new faces to the government. And prior to the election, we have seen a lot of senior ministers or senior members of the PAP announcing their retirement. So I would say that this is definitely a beginning of a new era for Singapore politics.
Now, besides the 32 new faces that they're introducing and also the senior politicians announcing their retirement, what is the general mood on the ground among Singaporeans? Are they expecting significant change or more or the same? And are they also liking the way that PM Lawrence Wong is, leading the charge?
I think Marissa generally is a mix of those who are happy and also those who wish to change. There are also those who want more help, especially during to help them cost of living. And because I see a lot of, at large crowds at opposition rallies, even though that doesn't necessarily means that the same at the ballot box. But we'll see the results tomorrow after around 10 p.m. and we'll see how Singaporean votes, especially with the younger voters, are expected to play a bigger role this time around.
Now, what role do younger voters and social media play in shaping the election narrative this time around? As we all know that social media, TikTok, Facebook, they are really kind of the information where people pick up all the different information and bits and pieces of their politicians. So what are the sentiments in Singapore?
I feel generally the younger generation of voters are more vocal, they are more active, and they are more well informed, especially like you mentioned with social media. And I see that this time around, podcasts has been like a key political campaign platform, especially for politicians. Even politicians like PM Lawrence Wong went to podcasts to share his views, and he was, also it gives because podcasts give a lot of platform also to the opposition side. So it gives basically, I think the younger generations are more vocal this time around.
Right. And I'd like to know, have there been any significant changes in election laws, constituency boundaries, or perhaps campaigning rules ahead of this election? Perhaps walk us through that.
Okay, so in terms of new law, there's a law banning the use of deepfakes of candidates. This is being introduced for the first time this general election. In terms of boundaries, that you mentioned, the Electoral Boundaries Review Committee, prior to the GE, have recommended a new boundary, I would say, resulted in the creation of 5 new GRCs and 6 new SMCs, and some being restructured and some being removed. Meaning that this year there will be like 33 constituencies comprising 15 SMCs and 18 GRCs with a total of 97 members of parliament to be elected. In terms of campaigning, the physical rallies have made a comeback this GE after they were banned in 2020 due to COVID.
Right. And the turnout of these political rallies, are there really, people are coming out in throngs, and really anticipating what is to come in the next election?
Yes, there's actually like a big turnout in every rallies. Even the Fullerton rally that's being held during lunchtime, there was huge turnout. There's a lot of interest from the public, to see like face to face. Mainly because after a 5-year absence, a 10-year absence, because last time was held in 2011. 2015. So it means that this time around they are more interested to see face to face, even though there's other platforms like I mentioned, podcasts and but still people will be going to these rallies to see up close and listen to up close what the candidates are saying or their manifestos.
Right. And from a media perspective, how transparent and accessible is the electoral process in Singapore, especially for international media covering the polls this time around?
I think we were given a fair opportunity for coverage, and also we were allowed to bring in staffs from our own country. For example, like Bernama, we are allowed to bring in staffs from HQ in KL for this coverage. And this time around, Bernama TV crew is also joining for coverage, and we also have bring in our photographer. So I would say that we are given fair and ample opportunity for coverage with access to information.
Right. Fantastic. And are there any implications from this election result that Malaysia should be watching closely in terms of economically, diplomatically, or socially?
I think as close neighbours, even though there might be no direct impact on us, but there are some policies change that maybe we can watch out for, depending on the result of this election. For example, during the campaign, we see a lot of opposition parties calling out for more control or stringent rule for foreign employment. And as we know, we have quite a number of Malaysians working here in Singapore. So maybe that's something that we can look out for and how it impacts our workforce, I would say.
Thank you, ASHIKIN, for your insights and for helping us better understand the key dynamics shaping Singapore's upcoming election. We look forward to speaking with you again as the results come in. That was ASHIKIN, AZIZ, Bernama, Singapore Bureau Chief. I'm off to another quick break. We'll be back with more updates. This is The World on Bernama TV. Thank you for staying with us. We continue Bernama World with this. At Michigan, a rally marking his first 100 days on Tuesday, President Donald Trump touted his economic achievements, including job growth and revive auto manufacturing, while criticizing Democrats' inflation and Federal Reserve policies. He claimed success with tariffs, especially on China, and vowed to end woke government policies. Despite his confident rhetoric, Trump faced declining approval ratings and public concern over inflation and the impact of his aggressive trade strategies.
Administration in the history of our country, and that's
Concurrently, President Trump says Americans don't need most of what China exports, downplaying concerns over rising costs from his steep tariffs. Speaking at a cabinet meeting, he claimed the tariffs have hurt China's economy, saying their factories are not doing business. He brushed off the impact on consumers, joking kids might have fewer dolls. But the US economy just shrank for the first time in 3 years, showing the strain of ongoing trade tensions. Meanwhile, Ukraine and the United States have signed a new deal to help rebuild Ukraine's economy. The agreement includes a joint fund for reconstruction and gives Washington preferential access to future natural resource deals. Talks went down to the wire with last-minute uncertainty. The U.S. Treasury says it's a recognition of America's support during the war. The deal doesn't hand over Ukraine's resources, but ties future profits to the recovery fund. In other news, Brazilian Foreign Minister Maura Vieira stated that BRICS members reached consensus on trade and tariff issues despite not issuing a joint communique. He emphasized efforts to reconcile differing oppositions for a unified declaration at the upcoming July summit. Vieira highlighted Brazil's global diplomatic relationships and commitment to international law. The group expressed concern over economic fragmentation and protectionism amid rising global tensions fueled by new U.S. trade policies under President Trump.
O Brasil e a China têm uma.
On another front, Meta Platforms introduced its Llama API aimed at helping businesses easily build AI products using its models. The tool, unveiled at Meta's first AI developer conference, allows developers to integrate Llama with just one line of code. While no pricing details were shared, the API is in a limited preview with a broader release planned. Meta also launched a new AI assistant app and plans to test a paid subscription service soon.
Today, we're announcing that you can now start using Llama.
On Wednesday, Vietnam marked the 50th anniversary of the end of the Vietnam War with a large-scale military and civilian parade in Ho Chi Minh City, formerly known as Saigon. Thousands gathered at Bac Dang Wharf, waving flags and singing along to special performances. Former President Nguyen Minh Triet attended the grand ceremony on April 30th, 1975. North Vietnamese tanks entered the presidential palace, ending the war and reunifying the country under communist rule. Moving on, in Wusu City, Xinjiang, Mengke Nazun, a national-level cultural heritage inheritor, is preserving Mongolian wrestling or bok. Thanks to his effort, this ancient sport, which tests strength, technique and courage, is taught in local schools to connect youth with their cultural roots. He believes every Mongolian man should experience bok, viewing it as an honor and a way to celebrate both personal and cultural heritage.
我不做这个东西，谁来做呢？
To wrap up, visitors got a taste of farm life in Egypt's Giza, joining a day trip that featured seasonal crops and traditional home-cooked breakfasts. It's part of a project by Nawaya, a non-profit working organization to preserve Egypt's culinary heritage. Since 2011, they have trained hundreds of rural women in healthy cooking using traditional recipes. Some now host food tours, giving guests an authentic experience while earning a living through homemade goods. That's a wrap for this hour's broadcast. Don't forget to visit Bernama.com and follow us on our social media channels. As usual, YouTube, X, Instagram and Facebook for the latest news. You can also receive updates from Bernama Radio at 93.9 FM. This has been The World on Bernama TV. I'm Lisa Ong. Thanks for watching.